in order to not be in constant survival mode all the time, I do have to look at the ways that I'm just like waiting to be happy in my life, waiting to live my life, waiting to decide that I like myself. Hello, welcome back to my podcast. My name is Arielle, and this is Feeling My Feelings, where I finally get to feel my feelings after years of dissociating from them, after years of disconnect with my body, and boy, has it been a long time coming. And in this episode, I'm kind of switching it up because I am going through such a life transition. I have suddenly kind of been pushed to be more vulnerable, more open, and to really step into what I feel like is my purpose in life. But with that comes the struggles of, the reality of change. And yeah, so in this episode, I'm going to talk all about it. Also, I got a cool new podcast mic that I did really not know how to place in my frames. So this is the growing pains, but I'm excited for what's next. Whew. I don't know about y'all, but life has been lifing lately. Also, if you're into astrology, I know that a lot of things are happening with the planets or something, and I don't know, but does anyone else feel like a bunch of things have shifted in the air? It almost feels like it's also like this is officially in the new year. Like January was like 5 years long, and then February just like is already exiting. And now it feels like, okay, something new is starting. I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but for me, I feel like I am both in like a glow up, like transition that is really healthy, and I'm stepping into something new and exciting, but I'm also getting pretty kicked in the ass with from the universe telling me like, all right, we really want you to now succeed. And we really want you to be who you are meant to be. We really want you to step into your purpose. Like, I don't know why, but I have recently felt pushed, like almost as if the universe is saying like, "Oh, you're ready." Which is awesome. Like, thanks universe, cool. But like what's interesting is I only got here after a past year of really battling and working on sort of getting out of survival mode, getting out of my victim mentality, and finally owning my sense of value and worth and my talents and my skills. It is crazy. Like, if you have watched me or listened to me at all in the past year, you probably have seen a progression of like, oh, this person is really upset by narcissist. Oh, this person is having unhealthy attachments. Oh, this person is battling victim mentality. Oh, feelings. Oh, feel your feelings. Oh, feel your feelings. Like that has been the course of my growth in the past year. And like, it's really great that I kind of documented my process to get to the point where I'm at. Right now, I am really embarking on wanting to basically make some sort of personal development brand and really dive into that as part of my purpose. I really have always been kind of like obsessed with how people treat each other and how we can transform and grow to our best selves. Like, every time I'm in like a relationship or whenever I have like friends or family or whatever, my knee-jerk reaction is always to want to, unfortunately, in the unhealthy way, fix them. And now I've sort of dialed that back, but also realized that not everybody needs to be fixed or wants to be changed on, of course, not my time, but also that is something that I would help and support them in, but I can't be there to just like take on their energy. I can't be that empath that is constantly being the one that bears the energy of other people who don't want to feel it. I have started to finally separate myself as an empath, as I guess a healer, as a helper, a fixer person. Like, I've started to finally separate myself from other people and bring that energy back to me. And let me just say, it's weird. It's weird because I have disconnected with my body, or disconnected from my body in so many ways for most of my life. Like, I always talk about how I dissociate. I basically maladaptively daydream, and I kind of like escape to my brain whenever I'm trying to process something that should be processed more in my body. Like, I have basically also taken on other people's energies again as an empath. Like, I've been attached to other people a lot. Like, overall, I've spent so much of my time not with me. And honestly, the times where I was with me, I didn't know how to care about myself that much. I didn't know how to nurture myself or deal with my own feelings, which is why I have this podcast. I, yeah, it was like, I think a lot of us can relate when we have to end up being our own nurturing source, but we don't know where to begin with that because, we probably didn't get that a lot growing up. So it's really interesting that I have just in the past year transitioned from this victim mindset to finally landing on, no, you can help other people, but there's a large part of you that needs to be grounded and present and connecting with yourself, obviously, to truly do that. And I think for me, like, I know for a lot of people, especially if you identify as empathic, it felt like you never knew you were allowed to care about yourself or put yourself first or take up more space. And every time you may have opened up and been vulnerable, it probably wasn't taken well, or somebody was busy thinking about themselves. And you probably just got used to this idea that, like, oh, people don't care. Here's the thing, I have also learned that in order to not be in constant survival mode all the time, I do have to look at the ways that I'm just like waiting to be happy in my life, waiting to live my life, waiting to decide that I like myself. And this message I actually got from, like, I was watching another YouTube video the other day and I realized, like, oh, okay, that is something that really resonates that I need to share as well. And it's this idea that like we are not being present in our bodies. We're not able to feel safe in our bodies, not only because we're constantly aware of our environments and how they trigger us, but because we have not unblocked our mindsets, unblocked the mindsets that are telling us that we are not enough for ourselves. Like, yes, we know that, but like, I don't think we are actively trying to take care of that because we are so caught up in the survival mindsets of the world, in trying to do that we never get to receive. We never get to be present with our bodies. And that's why I wanted to do that like meditation that I did last week. And like I think that most people honestly think it's stupid. Like, what's unfortunate is I think most people think that personal development is easy, that it's like not necessary. And what you really have to do is learn to be smart. What you really have to do is learn how to play the game. You need to do all of those things, but we're always like discarding the part of it where we build a relationship, a healthy relationship with ourselves. And also, a lot of us just like don't know what that looks like. Like, what are you supposed to do? Just like sit with yourself and be like, I love you, and then affirmations and whatever. Because also, a lot of personal development and sort of healing work that I've been doing has always felt like just healing. Like, I am in constant repair. But I've even looked at that and I thought, maybe that's not just repair and healing anymore. Maybe that is just the relationship I now have with myself. Do you ever think about that? Like, it's like whenever we think about like, oh, I'm going to go on a diet plan, or I need to journal, or I need to sit and cry, we think of it as like one time, like relieving things, like to just get off our chests or to reset us. But that could really just be an integrated part of our lives. Like, obviously, we always think about diet and exercise is a balance that we want to constantly keep up. And I think a lot of people think of diet as like, oh my God, this is gonna be my life forever. Like, I'll never be able to eat this thing or that thing or whatever. And then we go through yo-yo diets or whatever. And the thing is yeah, we could do that in moderation, but also that's just, we could blend things within our lives as just habits we take on. The same thing with like meditation, the same thing with like journaling, the same thing with when we feel our feelings and cry and we have moments of heightened, big, dysregulated moments, like where we're super like screaming and crying. Obviously, we don't want to do that constantly, but like we think about those things as like sometimes temporary band-aids or like one-time ways we relieve ourselves, or just like outbursts and unnecessary like emotions that boil up. All these things are just blended parts of a typical human experience. And I think what we always try to do is just fix it, outrun it. We outrun anything in our lives that doesn't look like I am confident all the time and I make lots of money. Yes, that is actually what we want in our lives, and that's what I want my life to look like. But it's always going to have that little struggle. It's always going to have the little imbalances because we're trying, it's always going to kind of look like that. And yes, we will have a lot of that happen in our lives, but what we need to stop doing is taking on every moment of struggle as like, now that's my whole identity. Now I have so much shame. Now I'm shit and bad at everything. Like, as a perfectionist and also someone who's still very much like, unfortunately still cares about what people think, but sometimes doesn't. I don't know. I'm confusing that way. Like, it feels like when it rains, it pours. When something happens, like it's like I feel required to feel ashamed about it. But I think now I'm having this healthy sort of like, I'm not skipping from the sadness. Like, I'm not skipping anger or frustration. I'm allowing it to flow. And I'm allowing myself to say, like, this is normal because my life ebbs and flows. And also, just like as an adult who now has more responsibility for herself and to take care of herself emotionally, that comes with maturing. And that also is really great to embrace, because at that point you get to say, like, no one else gets to shame me but me. No one else gets to tell me what my worth is, or when I should feel upset, or when I should feel successful, or how I define my own self-acceptance. It's crazy. Actually, especially since I'm more of an adult now, I'm realizing that that is all mine. That's all mine to define too. And so I have been starting to learn how to open up and to not feel so guarded and to not feel so ashamed by wherever I'm at in my life. And that has been such a process because I am so used to having my shield up and so used to being so self-protected, because I'm used to people, unfortunately, either discarding my emotions, not wanting to hear them, or alternatively, just like trying to push their emotions on me, or trying to make everything about themselves, or manipulating me. Like, when you have constantly been in that space, of course, it is hard for you to really care about yourself, to take your energy back, to take your power back. Like, of course, you've probably been in a state of like, not even, like, if you're like me, not being able to really pay attention to yourself, to pay attention to your own growth and your own value, because you're so focused on, I have to fight off this energy or work with this overbearing person or controlling person. Like, if you feel behind on life because now you are finally able to hone in on yourself and your wants and needs, it makes sense, because on some level, there was no space or time or presence that was allotted to you in order for you to really dig into that part of you. And so now that I'm jumping into a life coaching program where, in order to train as a life coach, you're also basically training by like coaching each other. I'm like, still, my body still has this knee-jerk reaction to freeze or to close off. And I know that it's a safe space, but I just still guard myself. And that's something in my body that I'm trying to retrain, rewire, reassociate. But it's interesting because I think at least the layers of like mental blocks have been really helping in me, like letting go those mental blocks has been really helping in me starting to open up. Like, it is really difficult to try to break a mindset that you built that protected you for so long. Like in the past year, unfortunately, this tends to happen, but unfortunately, I had to face some things that were really hitting me, that really gave me trauma, that I had to really struggle through in order to finally break through that mindset barrier that I was having. Like I finally had to learn how to trust people by being in situations where it was clean, like where it was clear that I couldn't. Like I really had to, like, and it's sad because I don't want to get to that point. I think I've said this before, but like I don't want to get to that point where you have to see the worst in order to change. But that is why it's important that we learn how to be open to receive and to take on good things, so that we believe things before they get worse, if that makes sense. Like, let me say this in a different way. Like, I could not believe that I could trust people. And it was like I needed more evidence. It was like anytime they would do something, I would still be very insecure and untrusting. Like I would still feel like well, yeah, it's very hard to trust people. So why would you do anything external? Why would you open up? Why would you be vulnerable? Why wouldn't you think that life is just all about struggling? What's crazy is it is hard to integrate like the belief that you're allowed to feel okay even when you were taught you're supposed to be ashamed. Like if you were like me, like cuz for me, for example, like I had to move back in with my parents during COVID, and I felt very ashamed about that because I was doing that in adulthood. But I always felt like I worked hard, like I, generally always tried my best, but, it was just that money, and like I had to pay for health, for like receiving support for my health issues. Like I always felt like I did my best, but that never shows if you just judge me based off of how much money I'm making. And I was always frustrated by that because I think a lot of us can relate, because whatever has happened in my life, I never learned fully how to just put myself first. And so it's very interesting to be stepping into this realm, into this world where I am helping other people do that. And what's great is that I have to learn how to do that for myself too. But like, it is very interesting because it is actually not comfortable. Like in general, it just doesn't feel safe yet. How are we gonna feel safe to receive and to allow, I don't know. Like I feel like I have been like so isolated and guarded for most of my life that like my body doesn't know how to feel otherwise. Like, and this comes down to kind of like honestly muscle memory. I and it's crazy how metaphorical it is. So for me right now, my body has been really rigid. I've had like muscle imbalances. My hips, to give you an idea, my right hip is kind of like too turned in and kind of overused. My left hip is not really grounded. And then my posture is very closed off and locked in. And for years, I have been to physical therapists, to personal trainers. I've worked out, like I've done so much to try to fix it physically and mentally, but like there was something almost energetic that was stuck, that was stagnant, that still needed to move in order for me to actually realign my physical body. It is crazy. It is crazy. I know. But like, I feel like holistically, I could not realign my body because my soul, the energy of my soul was not aligned also with my body. And to be honest, because of that, like it might have been the origin of my misalignment may have came from within. Like either way, that sort of thing, if it's not so esoteric, like that sort of thing creates blocks, creates like inability to tap into your body and to feel present. So obviously, it was going to show up as misalignment and not connecting with my physical body. Now, I have recently, just like in the past couple months, I've started to unlock all these different ways that I can move correctly. And like, it's weird because just a few years ago, I could not access how to, for example, put my shoulders down, or like I could not even engage my glute muscles because my hips were so out of place. And over again I could not access it. But then eventually, like last couple months, I started to, and I was like, where the fuck was this? Like after years of physical therapy and like watching YouTube videos on correct form, like there was something that was blocking me. And that was honestly the block to my connection with myself. So I feel like also this episode's kind of all over the place, but it gets me. It's a new era of myself, like, and it is interesting for me to start to speak on. But yeah, it feels like, I think it's interesting because most of our lives we have been taught to be really just kind of focused on the physical and attaining, like, you know, like attaining survival basically. And we're really stuck on making enough money, on being really efficient, on our like sort of rigid like society structure. But it always feels like the free flowing, the creative things are always the frou-frou, unnecessary, extra luxury things. It's like having time to rest and meditate is just like, oh, like, well, you know, it's almost like it's okay, it's almost like it's taken like you're crazy. Isn't that funny? I understand that like when you go into personal development, it feels embarrassing because it's so vulnerable. But if you really think about that, like we're making fun of ourselves for being like, I love myself. So what we're saying there is it's so much more normal to hate yourself, and I'm going to make fun of you for trying to like yourself. Like, isn't that funny? A lot of personal development and creating a relationship with ourselves just seems like it's not considered strong or tough somehow. I'll tell you, like in my life coaching program, like what's funny is a bunch of the people that are in it have gone through some of the hardest times in their lives. Like the people who have started the program, like one woman was basically like going through a bunch of health issues. She had a lot of gut issues. Her first programs, I believe, were health coaching. And then eventually, like, she wanted to get into spirituality. She got cheated on by her husband. She got through a divorce. She was disowned by her parents at one point. And like, this was not like a wild child, like crazy person. This person was just like going through a series of like basically of events that happened because she didn't know her own self-esteem. Eventually, she started to learn from like the dark parts of her life, and she alchemized it and she turned it into this coaching program. And now she's like constantly going on trips and stuff, and now she's helping a bunch of people. And the thing is when you hear about someone like that, you think, well, why do they deserve to be like, and she's also an influencer. You think about like, first of all, how the fuck did that happen when you were in such a dark part of your life? But also, why are you now making money off of your struggle? Or like, or how are you making money off of just helping people find their self-esteem? I always thought that was interesting whenever people devalue that. Like, and when you think of life coaching, it's one of those things where it's like, well, just be a therapist. And I wonder why that's more respected than someone who is life coaching. And I mean, also, if you think about it, why is like a personal trainer, like a physical personal trainer with fitness, like why is that more respected than someone who trains you and coaches you on your life and your personal development goals? I don't know. Again, it's this idea that liking yourself is so, that's so dumb. Why don't you hate yourself and be on the be on everybody else's level and compete and have a fragile ego like everybody else? Why should you define your success and your worth and your sense of self in a different way from everybody else? Like that woman who started this program, like she kind of like she's an influencer, but she kind of, she uses it in a way that does help people. And also just she embodies it. Like a huge part of the program is also like embodying yourself and your connection with your body. And it's sort of it's a very healthy way to be an influencer. But I think most people would think, like that's not useful. And the other person that's like one of the main instructors for the program, she was previously like she had a lot of grief and loss in her life. Like she had, I think, if I'm not mistaken, both her parents and her brother died. I'm not sure, it might have been an accident. And then she eventually transformed and like built her own business, and then she's also a coach and like wrote books and things like that. And I feel like when you think of people who are kind of like thought leaders or personal development or whatever, like you never, like when you see how they are now, and they're so calm and at peace, and it's very different from, let's say, like actors or artists who also kind of dabble in that sort of like not tangible but more feeling realm, like, but they're much more centered in who they are, and all they're doing is really just like talking about mindset. But something about changing our mindset still feels like that's extra unnecessary work. And you know why? Because once you start taking care of yourself and being more grounded and being more connected, you realize that a majority of the systems and the environments and the ways that things are built in the world, they're not compatible with your balanced self. And it's crazy. And like it feels like for me, because when I think about like building a life coach business or building a brand about personal development, I always have this thought of like, oh, that's not going to make money, because for some reason you can't build a secure financial, like grounded foundation just based on liking yourself or personal development. I don't know. Sorry, this is just kind of like, now I'm just kind of brain dumping, but it is really interesting that like that a lot of us now are building our own businesses. There's a lot of like spiritual people too. There are people who make money off YouTube. I always look at these people who make money off YouTube just like doing tarot readings, and they're making so much money, but it's like people are saying like, well, they're scam artists and they're like making money off of insecure people. Those are always going to exist in whatever field that you're in, just so you know. But there are genuine people who are actually connecting with other people sort of intuitively, and they happen to be using like a really spiritual tool that is really esoteric and out there, but they're still making money. They're still having successful YouTube channels. Like, I think overall, what am I trying to say in today's episode? It's like overall, you define your own success. You define your value. And to be honest, like, I think most things that positively improve somebody is enough. Like if they provide you with positive like personal development, or if it allows you to receive happiness, or if it allows you, to live more presently, whatever it is, all these things are fair game to be like, I'm allowed to have a passion about this, like to be passionate about this. I'm allowed to make money off of this. I'm allowed to like myself through this. Like, I don't know why it's hard to break this idea that we have to struggle and hate ourselves and kill our egos and compare ourselves, like, as the true sort of like real factual way of measuring ourselves and our worth. And that's when we can be successful. Like, why can't we believe that we can like ourselves? It's so, yeah, it's so interesting. But anyway, last thing I'll say is like this has always been sort of like the missing piece in our world. So all the people now creating like personal development, like creative or sort of esoteric spiritual businesses are necessary, because like those are the people who remain like living in that sort of feminine intuition, like free flowing, like that part of our being. They get to embody it, they get to live it, they get to help other people start to have that. You can't be behind in your life, because all we're really doing is just continuing to evolve. Yes, we could be stagnant, but if you look closely, like at whenever you're stagnant, like there are still some things that you are learning. And also, honestly, the universe does give you what you need in order to grow. So sometimes when you think you're stagnant, like I know for me, in my times where I have been isolated and alone and everything, there was a lot of value to that. Like during those times, I really felt like I solidified the fact that like I can trust myself and be with myself. What is very different is that I do believe that this ability to be alone has helped me with my own sense of resiliency and my own self trust. Like, if you are so used to being dependent on other people and their judgments of you and like their acceptance of you to survive, like, it can be hard to be alone at all, to have moments when you're alone. And a lot of my isolation has helped me form my own opinions about things. And it's also helped me like look at things from different perspectives. It also has helped me like it also has kept me stuck in something. So of course it's not always healthy, but I don't regret the time that I had where I had distance. Another part of me is like, I know there's a lot of me that likes that I can learn things on my own as opposed to depending on other people. And like, I'm not so dependent on book learning or like traditional learning. And like, there's a lot of me that like needed to be independent for a majority of my life. So if you're in a time of isolation, a lot of that is so that so that you can have the ability to develop aside from everybody else's blocks and limiting beliefs. So it felt like when I was kind of ready, I was triggered to the point of having to integrate into the rest of the world. We don't have to have that happen. You don't have to be triggered or going through like such a terrible time. But let's say the isolation was necessary, and then you'll be able to integrate with what you've learned just with yourself from yourself, and you can give that back and help other people. So whatever you're going through in life, like, and if you're going through a struggle, if you know you have an image of who you want to be and you aren't there yet, you are forming that person right now. The person you are right now is the necessary step for becoming the person that you need to become later. Like, I think we gotta stop thinking that people will only like us, we can only be accepted when we get XYZ, when we get enough money, when we have this like this sort of image or whatever. We can't keep waiting to live our lives. How can we like ourselves now? How can we build healthier relationships now? What is the inexpensive but still highly valuable way of living our lives right now? We get to find that. Like, there's a lot of free things that we can do. There's a lot of resources. There's a lot of free resources and that can help us like learn to express ourselves. There's a lot of free ways that we can find new environments and people, you know, go to meetup groups or like find groups online that are healthy so you can be in different environments. There's a lot of things we can do right now that don't cost us a lot of money, but still provide us a lot of value. Anyway, peace and love. Have a good one. Bye-bye.